Sportageous. Sport get smarter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sportageous videocast. Today is something very unique and something special. As a lot of you know, we have a Instagram page that focuses solely on climbing called Climbageous, and we recently did a giveaway on that where we had one of our fans win to come on over and chat to us about her climbing journey. Casey Lake Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Look, I'm really excited to talk to you because this is not something that I get to do very often. And having talked to you prior to this, I'm really excited to, get the chance to hear your story, learn from you, find out what it's like to be in the climbing space, and hopefully share some valuable insights with the viewers today about what it is to climb and what your story's been like. So let's just start it off at a very basic level. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do perhaps outside of the climbing world, where you're based, and just a brief intro.
Okay, well, I'm Casey. I am born and raised in the beautiful Sunshine State of Florida in the United States, although you wouldn't be able to tell because I am extremely pale, but it is true, I am a Floridian. It's been my home and I love it here. I'm a graphic designer. That's what I got my degree in. I've always been really attracted to anything creative and artistic. I love comic books. I probably drink way too much coffee. In my youth, I pursued ballet and all other forms of dance. I was in a pre-professional company. So that was always a good connection actually into climbing because they're very similar in many ways. So yeah, that's pretty much a little brief summary of me.
Sure. And let's talk about climbing. Of course, the sport is on a very interesting crossroads. If the Olympics were happening very shortly, with all things considered, it would have been really different. But of course, climbing is still very much on a growth trajectory. Yet still a lot of, you have a lot of gyms opening up, a lot of climbing facilities all around the world. Here in Australia, in the US, it's the same. How did you get into the sport? Where was your first introduction? And what sort of motivated you to continue on climbing?
I first really got attracted to climbing when I went to school for my college career. The university had a gym that had a rock wall, and I pretty much just started going and fell in love with it. I always loved it prior to that, like at birthday parties and little events, but that's where it really started for me. I think what initially drew me to climbing was the community, the people. They are so warm and welcoming, and the positivity that's flowing through everybody is just really great. And I think that's what initially really got me excited about it. I think I continue to do it today though, just because it's so mentally freeing and you can really just be you. There's no stress when it comes to climbing. So yeah, that's pretty much why I choose it.
Sure. It's a really interesting point that you bring up, because as an amateur climbing enthusiast myself, you talk about the climbing community and sort of that warm nature that it has. Tell me a little bit about that and what it is that, in spite of the fact that climbing is spread across all over the world, there's this similarity. What have your experiences been like with that community? And could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, with climbing community, it's really kind of rare within sports because while it's competitive and you can sometimes see there's, a little bit of aggression and everything, but with climbing at competition specifically, I feel like you want to win and you want to do well, but when your co-climbers are doing well too, to see everybody motivating them and pushing them, and it doesn't matter, male, female, tall, short, whatever, everyone is so excited to see people do well and to push each other in ways and build friendships and connections. It's also very much a trusting activity in sport. When you're, lead climbing, top roping, any of that, you really have to trust the people with your life when you're doing that. And that's a bond that you just don't always build with everything else. And it's just such a positive thing that it's really rare. You don't see that in the other sports. And I think that positivity is just something that we need more of in the world. So I think that's initially that warmth and everything. That's just really the ideal word to describe the people.
Sure, sure, sure. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that point that climbing is unique in the sense that it is one of those few sports where, they've sort of started things off at a professional level where the playing field for women and men is essentially equal. And it does sort of translate when it goes down to the grassroots level. So I really sort of agree with that. And I think that it is one of those unique things about climbing as a sport. What I wanted to ask you, I guess moving on from that, is what sort of climbing, there's so many disciplines, what sort of climbing do you enjoy? And then of course there's the question of what you think of indoor climbing versus outdoor traditional climbing.
I love bouldering just because there's less variables involved. I'm not worried about someone else on the end of the rope, and there's not as much safety issues with someone else. So bouldering is definitely my choice when it comes to it, although I try and make myself top rope more. But yeah, just you and the rock. I have more experience gym climbing. I am pushing towards getting more outdoor climbing experience. I have a trip coming up, which I'm really excited about. But bouldering, yeah, it's just you and the wall or you and the rock. And there's something so harmonious with nature and you and the world. It's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And what are the facilities and avenues for climbing like over there in Florida?
It's actually growing more and more. When I initially started climbing, there was really not much at all about my climbing gym at the university that I volunteer route setting at. That was pretty much it. We have another local wall, but it's pretty tiny. But since then, in the last 10 years, we've gotten maybe I can think of three other local gyms kind of within an hour and a half drive in our area. So it's definitely becoming more and more popular. And specifically in Florida, being a flat state, we don't have any outdoor climbing, so gyms are really starting to grow, and it's really nice seeing that expansion and development.
Sure, sure, sure. And you obviously watch a lot of climbing as well, as professional climbing and the likes. And who's your favorite climber? If you had to pick, okay, I'll give you the choice of three. If you could pick three, it's a silly question when someone says, "Who's your favorite climber? Give me one." It's never that easy. So perhaps three of the climbers that you enjoy watching the most and like sort of learning from, and why.
Okay. I professional climbers. I mean, obviously Sharma, he's a big name, and him and his just gravity defying climbs on crimps is just amazing. And I'm a love crimps. That's one of my favorite types of climbing. So I'd say he's definitely probably up there. I can't remember her last name, Courtney something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very good with names, but there's a
Yeah.
female climber named Courtney, and she is super strong. She seems super down to earth. I'm very much attracted to people who are also like very warm personalities.
Yeah.
So she's really cool. And another climber, they're actually not. It's not a pro, but just a comrade of mine. Would probably be another one of my favorite climbers, just because they are always educating other climbers. They don't care how advanced you are, how amateur. They're always saying, "Hey, let's go do this. Let's go climb. I can teach you. I can show you. You can teach me." So that's actually probably another favorite climber of mine.
Right, right, right. Okay. And the U.S. obviously has a very strong team for the Olympics. Everyone has qualified. It's interesting when we started Sportageous, one of the first people that I ever spoke to who was a professional athlete was Kyra Condi. And just recently she qualified just before all of this went down. She qualified for the Olympics with one of the American slots. So that was really cool to see. When it comes to watching climbing, I personally I enjoy the bouldering personally because I do a lot of that like yourself.
Mhm.
But I think there's this sort of visual appreciation for speed climbing, and watching it on TV just with that nature. It's almost like a sprint, right? When you're watching
Mhm.
field and track. So what are your thoughts on that, and what sort of climbing do you like watching?
I would say probably the same as you. I really enjoyed the bouldering competition. Speed climbing, man, sometimes I wish I could just put the slow-mo on and just watch their technique and how they can up that wall so fast. It is really, really impressive. The little spider monkey is just crawling up there. I would say though, yeah, the bouldering comps are probably something I enjoy the most. It's interesting seeing how they change also the timeline of how long you have to complete a project, and seeing them the way they work, how they figure it out, watching the female ones. And sometimes it's one of my favorite comps that I've watched is where all the girls are, probably crushing, and there's one girl, she's very petite, and she's really struggling to keep up with the rest. She hasn't maybe flashed any of the other projects, and then probably the last project of the comp, she crushes it and none of the other climbers can. And that's was probably my big first comp that I watched online. I was like, wow, I'm gonna start watching these more, because also the same as we're talking with the climbing community, everyone is so excited. Those places are so loud and so excited for everyone to do well.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting. So why is it a personal thing, or why is it that that petite frame climber being able to succeed or achieve was something that you found to be important to you personally? Is there a story behind that, or is it just a general thing?
I'm quite petite myself. I
Yeah.
am 4'11", and I have a negative eighth index, so I've got a lot of odds against me when it comes to the big moves. So seeing some professional petite climbers out there just crushing is really motivating for me. And it also, I feel like, can speak out to other girls, because girls alone, I feel like we get overlooked a lot in not just climbing, but all sports. So in particular, female petite climber who's still overcoming these odds and making these moves happen, I think it gives more motivation towards other female climbers and saying, hey, well, she can do it, I can do it too. So yeah, it definitely speaks a lot to me because I am very petite as well.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And I think there are some great pro climbers around. For example, if you look at a lot of the Japanese national team who are absolutely killing it when it comes to the sport.
Hey,
Um,
crush,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So what are the challenges that you experience in that context when it comes to climbing? So let's say what is more, perhaps what do you find more difficult than a taller person would when it comes to getting onto the wall and sending a route?
I would say the biggest thing is really being a petite climber. It's a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage, because a lot of the time, sometimes in some gyms, just depends on how they set and their style. But a route automatically becomes a grade harder because it's a bigger move for that last top out, or there's bigger dyno, larger stretch. And sometimes that can be really defeating and diminishing, because you've got the strength, you got the technique, but you just don't have the length, or you're just not big enough. So that is definitely a big disadvantage. At the same time, it also presents an advantage because it forces a petite climber to think of it and look at a route or a problem in a completely different light, different manner. And you've got to think of things that you would probably normally never do, or a taller climber would even consider. So as much as it does sting sometimes, it also forces you to make yourself stronger, think of different ways, develop your technique even more. So.
Sure, sure, absolutely, absolutely. I guess that's another interesting thing about climbing, that there's always another way. There isn't. So with a lot of sports, it's almost always like, if you do it like this, yeah, sure, your body might be a bit different, but if you persist with this, that is the only way to get better. But with climbing, it's almost like a free for all, where if you find your own way, and it works for you, go for it. So I think,
Maybe,
yeah.
yeah, I maybe say that's probably part of the reason I'm also attracted to it so much, and probably why being a graphic designer and being in the creative field, it's almost like a rock wall or boulder is your canvas, and there's so many different possibilities what you can do and what you can create. So.
Sure. And have you sort of had any other challenges in climbing? Is there anything else? Because at Sportageous we often do like to ask about overcoming things or dilemmas or challenges of any sort in your personal life, whatever so they may be, and sort of being able to do what you love. Have you come across something like that, or do you have a personal short story that you may like to share in that regard on your climbing journey?
I do. I have a very rare metabolic disorder, and because of it, I can't eat a lot of protein. So it's basically easiest to describe. I'm basically like a diabetic. I can have protein, but too much, and it actually starts to hurt me. It makes me sick. So keeping muscle on and trying to be an athlete and do all these things on the wall, it's really, really challenging. For whatever reason, that didn't stop me, and I decided, man, I'm gonna dive in. I'm gonna do this anyways. So I'd say that's a really big challenge on top of also being very petite. I mean, women in general are not built as muscular as men, so not being able to eat protein and keep that energy and help my muscle growth, it's definitely a big challenge. Pretty much struggle with daily, but it's another opportunity to overcome those odds and show people how far they can go.
Sure. And I mean, I would never have thought that, because if I go head on over to your Instagram page, you're doing all kinds of different sports and fitness things, and you're super active. So how do you, I guess, manage that? And what's sort of your routine or your regime that enables you to continue and push on?
I like to participate in pretty much anything that's athletic or sport-like. So someone says, "You want to do this?" I try and say yes every time. I do a lot of acro yoga and play disc golf. I also keep up with dancing and ballet training and instructing. So pretty much anything athletic. I have to do it pretty daily. I've got my hangboard at home. I'm actually working on building a gym in my garage, converting it over. So that'll help being able to go in and do some routes every day. Just wake up in the morning and go do some sets. I think that'll help a lot. So pretty much just making sure I'm active just about every day and making sure I'm keeping energy in me too. I also have to consume a lot more carbs and calories to make up for that protein. So I've got to also burn a lot more as well. So yeah, pretty much being active and doing anything that sounds like fun.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I can't imagine that it's easy. So kudos to you on in that regard. You raise an interesting thing in that when you were mentioning that you're building a gym in your garage.
Mhm.
So that would involve a bit of route setting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that something you've done before? How's that experience been for you? Because that is sort of the new thing for climbers at the moment with the pandemic. Everyone's at least got a hangboard. And to add to that, a lot of people, if they have the space, have even built at least a wall within their homes. So tell me a little bit about that and how that's been like for you.
Yeah, it's definitely been actually a positive side. I feel like I've, like you said, seen a lot of people pursuing building their own home gyms, and that's really exciting. Pretty much when I did start climbing and just really fell in love with it at the university, it being a university, there's not a lot of core routine climbers and regulars that come in. So to kind of keep good sets and routes for kids to come in and climb and find a joy for their climbing journey, I am a volunteer route setter at our local university gym, and I love doing that. I feel like it's helped make me a stronger climber and also understand other people's bodies and how they enjoy climbing, what they can do. We also do a lot of women's focused programs where we have women nights where we'll close the gym for the last hour and only women are allowed, and we really focus on encouraging them, getting them comfortable climbing in that atmosphere. So that's definitely become another passion of climbing, and that definitely has translated with the quarantine into converting our gym into a climbing wall. It is something that I've been wanting to do before the quarantine, but the quarantine has just helped do that extra push, say, why not? Now is the perfect time. And so, yeah, it'll be a good opportunity to not only get to climbing more, but we definitely plan to host people when things get back to normal, big parties, and get more people setting and get them all excited about climbing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fantastic. I personally wish I had the space to do that. So I will admit I'm a little bit jealous in that regard. You touch on enabling or creating almost, this safe space when things are on for women. How does that, sort of enable that encouragement and motivation that you touched on?
I'd say it's very inspiring not only for them, but for myself as well, to get other girls excited about climbing and see them start to pursue it on this themselves. It's very motivating for me. I feel like I've helped not only get myself out there, but I'm making a difference. And so spreading that word and getting them more comfortable, then they start coming in during the regular day, and, when there are other people in there, they're not as intimidated anymore. They're pushing themselves more, which in turn sometimes will come up and say, this has been really motivating for me and I've been doing better in other things in life as well. So it goes so much far beyond even the climbing. It makes them more positive and more confident in life in general. So I think it really has effects beyond climbing, even though that's where we love to keep it.
Sure, absolutely. And I think it's a fantastic thing in any way to, enable those avenues and platforms to grow the sport and grow the sport for women. So great stuff there. Look, just before we conclude, I wanted to ask what you sort of envision with what you're doing in climbing in the future, or have you really thought about that? And on a second sort of part to that question, what do you say to, because you're obviously in the space, to young women who are, starting out at climbing, coming to these sessions that you create? What do you say to them, and what could you perhaps share with some of our viewers in that regard?
Well, for myself, the sky's the limit. Anything that I can pursue and any opportunity that arises, it would be awesome if, I got to climb a lot more and people said, hey, let's sponsor you. You want to become a climber? I'd say, heck yeah, I want to be a climber. So I definitely would like to continue pursuing it. Whatever happens, happens. I do talk about with my husband, who's also very much involved with outdoors and climbing. If, stuff goes our way, we would love to have our own gym and facility and make it where, an encouraging, positive atmosphere for everyone. So that would be a really great dream to come true. And then for women who are really climbing and wanting to overcome those odds, I'm not one to talk of too much experience, but I would probably just say, just don't let any of the negative stuff get to you. It's really, if you can just get yourself in there and just learn to have a good time, it's very mentally freeing. Just continue to be positive. Don't be afraid to get in there. Don't be afraid to engage with other climbers, because it really is, like we talked about before, warm and welcoming, and all people. And the more you get yourself involved, I think the more of a great time you're going to have. And if you think you have something that going against you, you should really don't let that stop you, because it very well may play to your advantage and be a strength. So.
Fantastic. Well, everyone, you heard it right here. And hopefully a few years down the line, if you head to Florida, Casey will probably have a gym set up with her husband, which you should definitely go check out. And yeah, I think we'll end it there. But thank you so much for your time, Casey. And of course, everybody, don't forget to check out her social media pages and follow her on Instagram. We'll have shared everything with this video for you to have a look. Thank you so much, Casey.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.